What is good? We're back. We've got some more moves to make. We're creeping up on a very important week in the NFL. And of course, why wouldn't you have a bye week? Right smack dab in week 14. Christian McCaffrey right out of your lineup in a very pivotal week. Now, some of you might have it locked up, but this has been a real bummer since we've had a schedule change, right? This week 14 bye week it really stinks. But Big Co, how you doing today?
Yeah, same thing last year, man. That week 14, there was bye weeks everywhere, and can't believe they did it to us again this year. I really thought that like the uproar would happen, and they'd be like, "All right, we could just there's fantasy's a nice industry for the NFL, nice little ancillary piece that definitely drives. I mean, you think about they're all about their viewers and bringing in younger audiences, and there's 9-year-olds running around talking about fantasy football. Like, I'm really surprised that they're not changing this, the week 14 bye week stuff. This is crazy.
Yeah, but definitely a bummer. And hopefully, we're going to talk about the market on some players like we do most Mondays here. Hopefully your trade deadline hasn't passed for Dynasty, right? There's no reason that you should have a trade deadline before the playoffs in Dynasty. We could tomato it through the playoffs or whatever you want to do, but coming up into the playoffs, there's no reason for anybody to have a trade deadline. So if there is, talk to your commissioner, tell them to knock it off. It's going to league vote while you're at it. Get rid of kickers and defenses. Thank me later. So let's jump into it here. We're going to talk about two high-end guys to start with, and we're going to talk about potential contender and rebuilders here. So we're going to kind of walk the line in both worlds here. Are they trashy or classy? Shout out to Are You Garbage. So let's go in, and you had brought up, hey, let's talk a little St. Brown and Nabers here while we're going into kind of week 15 and, how that could impact somebody and how to take advantage of it.
Yeah, of course. Like, we're so late in the season here, you're probably either in the playoffs or you're not. But those fence riders, even if you're, you could be a 12-man league, you could be sixth place, but like, the guy above you and the guy below you could have the same record, right? You could just go a lot of different directions here. And so what I was thinking was, if St. Brown's going to miss a week or two, unless I got a cheap league, right? If I got a cheap league, it's all about bragging rights. Like, I could probably get down with just, not doing this. But like, if it's a bigger money league, like I think, giving up a week to potentially, this is all speculation on every league is different and whether you can make a trade. But if I could take advantage, like you said on the podcast that came out this morning when you and Doug we're talking like St. Brown has been so consistently good for years now. He's locked up on that team to play in that dome with that quarterback that likes to feed him the ball. Goff is paid with a long-term contract. St. Brown's paid with a long-term contract. And it's their system, right? Ben Johnson left. What's going to happen with the Lions, right? They're like top 3 in points in the league again. And St. Brown's been crushing, averaging 8.
And big thing here, Dan Campbell took play calling from the guy who was calling plays. They're not fired or anything. They may move on with him next year, but that is huge to know that Dan Campbell can come in here and call us some plays and be like, all right, this offense works just fine that way, right? So sorry to cut you off, but that was a big sticking point for me when you don't have the head coach being the offensive mastermind. When everybody moves on, this can get real sticky real quick, and this is a case where it worked out fantastic for St. Brown.
Yes, we did. Yeah, there was a little negotiation and a little talk there before the season about St. Brown, and I was like, I just couldn't see him and Goff not being linked together. But that's a good point about Campbell calling the plays, because right now, if I'm a GM, if I'm a owner of a NFL team, like, I want my head coach calling plays. Like, those are the best offenses in the league. You're right. Like those are the best offenses in the league when you have, or it doesn't work, or it's horrible. But the top 10 offenses in the league are pretty much all run by the head coach. So Dan Campbell coming in, being able to do that's great. So yes, St. Brown, I'm just saying, like, this, you might not, obviously anybody can tear an ACL at any time, Casey. You can get a high ankle sprain, whatever.
Sure.
But this is like the only chink in the armor we've ever had for St. Brown.
Sure.
And anything can happen. But if this is the buy the dip moment, this is the moment that I want to try to buy the dip, right?
Yeah.
And so you leverage this point in the season and say, hey, what can I give up to get St. Brown? It's like, I think it's worth a shot. Now, if you are playing against your best friends and like you mentioned, you got a league that you haven't won with us, won, and we've been playing it for 15 years, and somehow you haven't won. You've had great teams, and you guys had some bad luck. Maybe this isn't for you this week. But obviously you have St. Brown on that team. Funny enough, but I think trying to take advantage of this serenity now, right? You're falling apart at the end. Good trade though, picking up Travis Kelce and
Waddle.
Waddle. That was a solid move.
We'll update that trade here at some point.
So anyway, I like the idea of giving up a week of putting St. Brown on your bench if you can pull it off.
Yeah. So basically, I think this is the angle here isn't contender or rebuilder. I think it's either or. Obviously, if you're a contender, and you lost St. Brown, then this is a different conversation. But if you're a contender and you can find a way to buy St. Brown from somebody because maybe he's a little injured right now and they need something else to happen, and you got a pretty loaded team and are willing to get rid of some draft picks, like you said, maybe there's a spot to sneak in here and grab yourself some St. Brown here. Here's Pittman in a first. That was a day ago. Here's just looking at some upper echelon ones now. Here's Jefferson for St. Brown, right?
Straight up. I understand it.
I get it. I mean, that was today. Here's Nico Collins in a 2 and a 4.
I'll do it.
You like that?
I don't mind it. Nico's good too. Nico's he was on the Bible list last week, right?
Yeah.
It just being able to get that next tier down, that top 10 wide receivers. There's only, there's 15 receivers that deserve to be in the top 10, right?
Yeah. So there's 227 first for St. Brown. No problem with that. I don't mind doing that at all.
Plural, 2027 first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand it. Yeah, I mean, he's a into the first round. Obviously, with Superflex, he gets bumped into the beginning of the second round, really because of all the quarterbacks. But like that's one of the things when we did that review a couple weeks ago is like when we did the mock draft was how is St. Brown still at 210? Well, because the names in front of them are ridiculous, right? We did a mock draft a couple weeks ago, and I mean like 210 and starting over from scratch, that's 23 names. So like he deserves to be in the top 15, top 12 names. But with Superflex, the quarterbacks are so valuable and he got pushed down for that.
Right.
You can't just take 2 random firsts and buy your way into the end of the second round in the startup.
Yeah. And we made the point to kind of start all this conversation off. He's just been one of the most consistent, rock solid players that you could possibly get. There was maybe a dip in this season on the offseason where you could have bought him. But I mean, since coming into the league, wide receiver 21 is rookie year, and he caught fire late there. And then 7, 3, 3, and he's 4 right now, man. Like, if you have an opportunity to come in here and grab him one way or the other, contender, rebuilder, however it is, that's an asset. If somebody's desperate right now, and that's what we're trying to play to. And just remember, we're going to transition to Nabers here in a minute, and Nabers plays into more of this right now. You know who's number 1 points per game right now since he came back?
Rashee Rice.
Mm-hmm. And we were, same thing last year, go buy Rashee Rice as much as you can. Plenty of other people telling you sell him for any first. It's bad advice. He's fantastic. And now this isn't the same thing because St. Brown is just hurt for maybe a week or 2 here, but it could be hinging on somebody being, needing another player and some picks to kind of keep this thing rolling. So, hey, when you see an opportunity, we go knocking on doors and seeing what we can do here. So is it possible to buy St. Brown? Most smart players are going to say no.
Yeah.
But if there is an opportunity here to even play, just a little off of what costs initially is, then do so. And hopefully you don't need him for this week, and then he comes back in a week or 2. And if not, then he's just on your roster for next season, and you've got a top basically 8 fantasy receiver in your lineup. So
yeah, I'm trying to like I'm gonna offer you. I'm gonna give you Lad McConkey a 2 and a 3 for St. Brown. I'm gonna give you.
Underdog just dropped prediction markets, spreads, totals, and team outcomes. And the best part, you can combine them with player picks for bigger multipliers. Sign up today with code FFDYNASTY and make a $5 entry to get up to $100 in fantasy bonus entries. Prediction markets are now live in 25 states, including Texas, California, and Florida. And Underdog is available in over 40 states with player picks and draft games. Prediction markets, player picks, all on Underdog.
Olave and 2 2s and 2 3s. My next year's my next 2 years seconds and my next 2 years 3s. And if you say no, then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give you Olave in a first, and then I'm gonna ask for your second in St. Brown. I'm just gonna go down my roster and try to make it happen. Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you Devontae Smith and Zay Flowers together. Bang bang. Right. I'll give you 2 guys. Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you need those players to help you try to get into the championship or the playoffs this week, maybe
there
that's
comes
not
the
necessarily
sacrifice
you want to do.
There comes the sacrifice of the opportunity, right?
Right, exactly.
The window.
Yeah, but if you can, Devonta Smith has been fantastic this season as well. Zay has been good when the offense is good, but that's 2 good guys to try to sell for. Those are all good examples, I think, of players to try to go sell for. Michael Wilson right now, for somebody who needs a player with Marv Harrison, and we'll talk about him in a minute, but using somebody like Wilson and a first and some other things right now to be like, hey, go fill in Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's putting up big numbers. I'll take St. Brown. You get a first and a 2 and Wilson, or however it needs to be. Even if it was a first this year, a first next year, and Wilson. To be able to swap that, you're giving somebody who has a high-end potential for somebody who might need him. And, dude, there are so many crazy players out there that do things like that in the spur of the moment because their back's up against the wall. So that's why we just spent so much time talking about this, probably way too long, and you maybe even tuned out by now. But I think this is this is an opportunity. So try to take it.
I like it. Well, Michael Wilson's worth way more now than he was 2 weeks ago.
Right. And so Nabers would kind of be in this same vein, right? Injuries, if you're a rebuilder or even potentially a contender, you're going to send feelers for where Nabers is at right now for somebody, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna send out Pickens and Michael Wilson, 2 and a 3 for Nabers to see what happens. I'm gonna send out Lad McConkey and Michael Wilson, 2 and a 3 for Nabers to see what happens. I'm gonna start doing that and work and figure out where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. You would definitely sell Pickens plus for Nabers.
Yes.
Yeah, let's see where the Nabers price tag is right this minute, and see what we can dredge up here before we kind of move on to some other players. But again, lengthy breakdown of kind of the hows and whys. But when you come into a situation where you can find a player as good as St. Brown or Malik Nabers right now, you're catching guys right now who are in positions who are not maybe making the best sound decisions that they could possibly make. Like, here's Nico Collins from Malik Nabers,
Yeah. That's
3 weeks ago. You couldn't have traded Nico Collins for Malik Nabers, but he's been on a heater and somebody needs him. That's what we're talking about.
That's why we do the show, Casey. I know you've already said it 3 times that we might be talking too long, and you're probably talking to the guy in the comments that said that I shouldn't have talked so long to you last week about Chase Brown. But it's the week before the playoffs. In 99.9% of the leagues, this is the last week before the playoffs start. Now, you've got a funky league, that's fine, but that's why Casey's saying what he's saying. That's why we're talking it through like this, because if you don't want to go make any of those trades for St. Brown, that's fine. You use those same principles. The idea, like right now, whether you're in the playoffs or you're trying to win a championship or you're rebuilding or you're fence riding, you're somewhere in the middle, all of it comes down to right now, whatever trade offer you're sending, you can almost see, you can understand what the other person's going through. Every negotiation is about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, man. This is every negotiation tactic out there is try to figure out what their perspective is, not your feelings. So right now, the playoffs start next week. I can look at the league standings, and I can look at Casey's roster, and I can see who's hurt, who's not hurt. I can look and see how he's been playing the last couple of weeks, and I can understand. I can know
also
exactly
know who he
how
is for how long we've been playing together for the most part too.
That's
is he an irrational player?
Right.
Does he make emotional decisions?
100%. Even if this is an FFPC league, and if we just started this year, and I don't know anything about anybody, I can look and see right now how people feel about their teams right now. Like you can't do that in week 5.
Yeah.
You can't do that in the off season. You can do that right now.
Right.
Because it's the playoffs right before it.
Here's another Malik Nabers in a first for Brian Thomas in a first, right? There's some bad Malik Nabers trades in here right now.
There's got to be some context on those first round picks.
I'm sure it's end of first for top of first,
right?
Or something along those lines. But that's cool. You can't see that in this, but that's if I had to apply context, that's where I would go with it to make it make a little bit more sense, right? But honestly, I don't really see the comments a ton, so I didn't see that one. But you also have the commenters and people listening of, why are these guys talking so long about this? And you have to remember that everybody isn't on the same level of playing. And sometimes we forget that, but this is why sometimes we take longer conversations through things to just kind of explain, like you said, where everybody's head could be at here. So, and sometimes we get carried away on things, and that's just us having a good time and being thorough, but it's also that everybody's not at the same level. Some people just started playing, and they need to kind of understand where we're coming from and hows and whys. So another player we talked about yesterday on the show, but it was only on the podcast side. So if you're watching this on YouTube, Lamar Jackson right now, not hurt, but on a 3-game skid and going into the playoffs right now. So if there's a way you can afford to go get Lamar Jackson from somebody right now, you have to do it. It's the same logic here. And it's what we're doing before we go into the playoffs here of saying, all right, what can we do here? And maybe Lamar isn't going to, maybe that ship isn't going to get righted this week or even next week. And it's not quite as good as we've seen. And maybe Lamar's got some sort of knee, calf, toe, ankle thing that's really messing them up how he throws the ball. But Lamar Jackson's been basically an MVP for 3 straight seasons when healthy. Yeah. It didn't just magically switch off, right? So if you can find somebody who is dying for, something to happen with Lamar, like here's Lamar Jackson for Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah.
That's not everybody, but here's Lamar Jackson for Bo Nix and Xavier Worthy, right?
Done.
You might not say, oh, that's so great, but like you would have never, if Lamar Jackson didn't have this last 3-game skid, nobody would ever do that.
100%, dude.
You know what I mean? So
that's 100%.
That's just kind of what we're trying to bang into your heads here. And again, I'm sure some of y'all are like, all right, already. But that's just we're just giving you ideas and principles of kind of what we do. So anything else to add on Lamar here?
No, that's why the window hasn't been open for him in 3 years, like you said. So you have a window. And if you are interested in, like I got a team where Lamar's my only quarterback is Superflex, and I've just had the worst luck with my second quarterbacks. I could try to tear down off Lamar to get another quarterback in plus. I need to turn him into one quarterback into 2. Well, I can't do that right now.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be the guy selling. Like I need to do that for this team, but I'm not doing it after this 3-week stretch. You're not going to catch me being the guy who's selling Lamar Jackson right now. I sure would like to be the guy buying him somewhere.
For sure. So 3 studs right there that you got some opportunities on. But we're going to pivot here and talk about some guys that maybe, they could potentially be, you could be buyers or sellers. So these guys were guys that I could see maybe potentially, but I would be more looking at this through the redraft lens of saying, hey, these guys I could offload right now. And the storm just is brewing right to offload them somebody to maybe lost to St. Brown or has had some other injuries or a player just isn't as hot as they were and they're starting to cool off. And now again, your back's up against the wall going into the playoffs. I just talked last week about how my back's up against the wall in a league where I lost some guys and, I never won it. And I talked about it on the show yesterday on the podcast side, same thing, the trade about Kelsey and, all these other things. And I'm not necessarily a super emotional player, but like, I do want to win this league real bad.
Yeah.
And so, everybody's got different ways that they go about things, but this is the time to strike if you can, because emotions are definitely running high. Some people will keep them tight, some people won't. And sometimes, you're just like, I want to make one deal before the trade deadline to try to shore some things up. Everything's going fine, but if I can add one more big piece here, that's great. And so Terry McLaurin comes back, right, and has a huge game last night. Yeah, he's been missing him all season. Older wide receiver. Is this an opportunity to get it? Would you be selling Terry right now if you're like a rebuilder? I think for sure, middle of the road team. Is you taking this opportunity for Terry here to try to say, hey, somebody needs this guy right now and I'm selling him, or would you rather ride this out for another season and see if you get a bigger rebound?
I'm trying. I'm certainly 100% going to take this 7 for a 96 and a touchdown and mixed it in combination with the fact that everything we just laid out about what week it is and next week's the playoffs. I'm 100% trying to make that happen. And really, I would be pushing that. Like if you got Terry and there's 3 guys, there's 3 teams in the league that really are going to, like the 3 favorites. I'm probably pitting those against themselves, right? Not necessarily on a public, platform, right? I'll go individually and say, hey, Casey, it's you versus Dougie Fresh versus Alex in the play. Y'all are the top 3 teams. Alex's team is stacked. He doesn't really need a wide receiver, but you and Fresh both, need a wide receiver. And I'm trying to, something like that. I'm trying to get the top guys to buy Terry McLaurin this week after that performance and the timing of it, because that magnification versus, like you said, maybe sure there'll be other sell windows for Terry, but he is 30, and what if he gets hurt next week?
Sure,
like what if
he
most of the week, most of the year. Exactly. Like if somehow, he's been hurt most of the year, exactly. But player ABC, I talk about this at least 3 times a year. Like if you're 30 years old and you have an ACL, your sell window is shot for 12 months until you come back and show somebody that you can play. Not everybody is Mike Evans, Bo.
Yeah, well, so Tyreek Hill right now.
Well, exactly. Tyreek Hill. Maybe he plays again, maybe he doesn't. So I would use this time as like, I guess what I'm trying to say, I would be okay selling him for a little bit less than I think I could get if everything goes right for a couple more weeks. You know what I mean? Right. Because if everything doesn't go right for a couple more weeks, that's probably going to be a nice sunk cost that you might not ever recoup again. I'm not saying you're going to get
certainly sitting on it for the whole next season, and I think Terry's going to have another good season, right?
Me too. I think he could have easily have to. He doesn't have a ton of he doesn't have a ton of wear and tear. It doesn't feel like he's I think he moves so smooth. Like he's obviously super fast, but like he's also smooth, and I think he's a stud. He's just 30 years old. Look, props to Marcus Mariota.
Oh, played great last night.
Playing amazing, right? So I don't know if I'm getting a first round pick for Terry McLaurin, but there's a Casey Myers might give you that late first for Terry, and you got to try. And then hey, I'll give you Terry in my 3rd rounder next year for your first if it doesn't work out.
Right. You got guys who have, like you said, St. Brown maybe missing a week or 2 here. You got guys who had Drake London, now, I don't know. Is he coming back at all? Yeah, I have no idea. Right. And those are guys volume based, crushing for you, keeping you in the fight all year long. Right. Somebody's team was good, and then Rashee Rice came back in, and then now they need an extra piece of firepower right now because he come back and he's just crushing the whole league, and you're like, damn, I need another piece now that he's got Rashee. I need a better
or he's got Justin Jefferson, and he can't really play him.
Right.
He's got Drake London.
He's winning though,
St. Brown might be on his bench. Marvin Harrison's limping around. It's yada yada yada.
Right.
But because you said it tonight, and you mentioned that everybody is not on the same level. Don't get caught in the Casey Myers trap. If you're selling Terry McLaurin and Casey Myers is giving you his 1st round pick and he's a contender and he says, well, I'll give you my 1st, but you got to give me your 2 back. Don't get caught in that Casey Myers trap by giving up.
Strong move though.
Right? It's a great move, but don't get caught on the other end of it by giving up, taking Casey's 111, maybe 112, maybe 110, but don't give up. Don't take that pick and if you're a bad team and give away the 2-2 or 2-3.
Yeah.
In a rookie draft. Don't do that.
Yeah, which as a move, I advise that's a move that you should send out, but don't take
Absolutely,
it.
you should be trying.
And here's a good example of that. Here's some Terry trades real quick, and we'll get moving on to the next guy.
Hey guys, quick reminder. If you haven't signed up for the free Discord or the free Patreon, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description.
But here's today happened. It's a first and a second for Terry. Now, I would assume that is the best team in the league or next to the best team in the league trading for Terry McLaurin. And that guy's thinking, well, 111 is not enough. I need the 211 too, right? So that's how I would frame that trade up in my mind. That's what happened this morning with that.
That's best case scenario. That's a great trade for the Terry guy to get rid of Terry.
He got a first and a second. But if Terry just does what he did for the next 4 weeks in a row, then it's that guy might have just won $1,000, So.
And this 4 years ago, you did that with Mike Evans when he was 29, 30 years old, and he crushed it. He's all pro for 3 more years. Or right. Devontae Adams.
Yes. So here's a 2 for Ricky Pierce. Here's a 2 for Terry McLaurin. Here is a 2 for Terry McLaurin. Ricky Pearsall for Terry McLaurin. That's a nice rebuilder trade right there.
Yeah.
And there's Xavier Worthy for Terry McLaurin, half-point PPR. So, if you're sitting,
I could certainly reset the clock with Worthy, Terry straight up. If in that list of trades you gave me, if I have Terry, I don't really want to trade Terry for what I assume would be the only person buying Terry right now is a decent contender. I don't want to give away Terry for a late 2.
No, I agree.
I don't want to do that.
No, give me that. I need that first.
Or multiple 2s,
multiple 2s and a player like
a 2 and a 3 this year and a 3 next year. Stack it up at least.
I need more.
Let me multiply that thing.
Yeah. All right. We mentioned Michael Wilson. He's somebody who, if you're a rebuilder right now, or a middling team, and you're like, I'm not going to make it, and there is news going around right now that Marv potentially could be an IR candidate because the heel's bothering him. He's going to try to fight through it, but Michael Wilson with no Marv has been outstanding, right? Now this week, not so great. Marv was, looking like he was going to have a really nice game. Wasn't a bad game, 6 for 60, I believe, or something along those lines. So Wilson would be somebody else trying to offload. In that case, I would take a 2 for Wilson, right?
Agreed. Yes.
And so
that's understanding that if Wilson just got in a spot where he had a quarterback willing to throw him the ball no matter what, and he proved himself. He crushed it, right? So understanding that Michael Wilson is a legitimate wide receiver. Is he a megastar? Probably not. But could he be worth a little bit more than a random 2 next year if he moves on to greener pastures or, a more elevated quarterback play? Yes. But he could also do exactly what he just now did with Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride were both on the field, which was nothing.
Right.
And that's not his fault. He's on the pecking order would not, absolute man-child with Trey McBride, who demands all the targets every week and who's out there just crushing it. So the team's going to keep giving him the ball as, chasing records and stuff like that. And then Marvin Harrison is the guy that they have to get right. If anything is possible for this team, they want to get Marvin Harrison right because the ridicule is just, that high of a draft pick. You don't want to be wrong. So Michael Wilson is going to get scraps when those 2 guys are healthy. But if you're the Michael Wilson owner and trying to sell him for a quick, nice profit because he was worth nothing 3 weeks ago, he was a nice guy, but a couple of my deep benches, I like to have him. But the best thing to happen to you is Marvin Harrison limping around right now. So if nothing else, if you get lucky and you find this little mixture, Marvin Harrison is that second flex, no doubt about it. I got to have him on a starting lineup for a high-end contender in your league. And you go to him and say, hey, Marvin's limping around. Jakobi Brissett's the quarterback next week. Kyler Murray ain't coming back yet.
He's been wide receiver 5 through the last 3 weeks.
Here's Michael Wilson.
Mm-hmm,
if you can find that combination in your league, that would be a decent exit strategy.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of things, where we just talked about don't do this for Terry, this is a great move with Michael Wilson, right? You take Michael Wilson and your 2 and you move it into a 1. So the way I'm looking at that trade is the top guy at in the first round, he thinks he's going to have a high end pick, and he didn't. The other guy's a crappy team, so he's 2-1 through 2-4. Well, and he's saying, all right, well, I don't want to pay a whole lot for Wilson, and maybe the two's not, but that the crappy team just moved his pick up into the first round, right?
Yes.
With Michael Wilson, who was found money. So in that regard, I don't mind doing that on either side, right?
Yeah, and I love that. And when you're the guy selling Michael Wilson and you have the bad team and you're talking to the good team, you literally explain that to him. You say, hey, man, you're about to win the championship. You're about to be at least the 110 and 111 pick. Most likely you're going to make a championship, yada, yada, yada. You got the first round bye. I'm going to give you Michael Wilson, and you give me, and let's make this pick swap. I get your first, you get my 2. I suck. This is going to be the 2-2. This is a 4 or 5 pick move. And you literally might have to explain it to him. But what that does is it gets you, I assume you have your first round pick. Maybe you don't, but that gives you the 111 now, the 112, 110. And that pick, you can trade back with it, or you can trade up with it from there. It's just, even obviously you got to make the right pick. You could have the pick 110 and the guy at 2-2 picks, the good player, and the guy at 110 picks the bad player. That's on you. That's fantasy football. That's how it's going to play. To talk to the NFL GMs about trying to get that shit right every year, it's impossible. So, but explain it to him and make it happen.
Yeah. And then there was another one for Jordan Addison. It was Michael Wilson, a 3 and a 2 for Jordan Addison. If you could move, obviously Addison's struggling right now too, so that's not doing anything for you. But we know what Addison can be if we just get some competent quarterback play. And then you can say the same thing for Wilson, but it's much more likely that Addison will be back to being an asset. I can't see the Vikings going into next season if it finishes like this with JJ. That's a fun person to kind of go after with somebody like Michael Wilson. So
I didn't even try Michael Wilson. I might not. I might pay that if I had to, but that would probably be like the top I would pay for Addison. I do agree Addison's a beast. I would probably say Michael Wilson and a 3 and a 3. If I start Michael Wilson in a 3 to just get the party started and see what happens.
Yeah,
and work my way up. I'd make them drag me up to that 2, 3, and Michael Wilson.
All right. So if you're a winner or a contender right now, out of these 3 guys, who would you buy? Jakobi Meyers, Christian Watson, or Alec Pierce?
If I needed to start him next week, it's Watson. If I needed to just put him on my bench and see what happened, it's a tie between Christian Watson and Pierce. I like the idea of Pierce going forward, but I've always enjoyed Christian Watson, and he comes in on a team that doesn't really give good targets to anybody, and he gets them right. Like that, he's literally come in and made the team give him more targets.
Yeah,
and I know there's some injuries, and
that's a big part of it for sure.
Obviously Tucker Kraft got hurt, and Jaden Reed's not around. But I'm saying but they just have not been targeting anybody like that to that degree.
No, he's been their best receiver right now for sure, which is why if I'm a contender, he would be somebody that I wouldn't mind moving off of, because Tucker Kraft comes back. Reed comes back, there's a lot. The target share gets moved around a little bit. It has nothing to do with Christian Watson. Our buddy Big D is always like, well, I'll sell Christian Watson at this point, and then I'll buy him back when everybody's off of Christian Watson after everything's going right health wise for the Packers.
Dude. If you could use Christian Watson as a legit tier up, like if you can make him part of a deal that gets you into that St. Brown Nabers discussion that we started with, that's totally fine. But I've drafted Christian Watson multiple times in the FFPC this year in the 6th round, a team that you and I have and a team that I have by myself.
Just
put him on in the FFPC rookie draft. FFPC rookie draft.
Not the 6th round of a startup, 6th round rookie draft, because you can only keep a certain amount in the FFPC.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm a fan, and I know I said it a dozen times in the last year, but Watson's last 9 catches before he got hurt last year were for 30 yards a catch. He averaged 30 yards a catch the last 9 times he grabbed it. And there's haters out there to say, but he didn't catch many. I think he's a beast. I mean, he's not George Pickens level beast, but I think he's a beast. He's not going to be. He got so cheap, and I went and bought him everywhere, and it's nice.
I like the buy. I wouldn't mind selling here if I'm like a middling or rebuilding team for Watson. And Myers is a little older, so if you wanted to get out, you could. I think he's just basically earning a contract here with Jacksonville, and we can see how productive he could be when you throw it to him, right? So with Jakobi, if I had to start one for the rest of the season, I think I would feel more comfortable with Jakobi, but Tucker Kraft isn't coming back. And since moving on with Jakobi the last 3 weeks, he's been wide receiver 11, and Christian Watson has been wide receiver 10. So there's probably a little bit more ceiling outcome in Watson, but a safer floor, I feel like, with Myers, right?
I agree with that. He ain't been. I mean, he's been in town for just a couple weeks.
He's not been there long, so I think next year moving forward, he's going to be somebody who is going to be counted on heavy. Like, I think they needed another professional wide receiver that they can trust. And I think he's coming.
That's a good point. If you're in a super deep league where you got the 2 or 3 wide receivers and you got 2 or 3 flexes, and like if you need to put somebody in your lineup that's probably really, really cheap, Jakobi Meyers might be your man. Watson's probably going to cost you a little bit more, but he was bottomed out, so he might not.
The Watson trades were a little cheap. Watson trades were a little more on, like, here's Jakobi Meyers for a third today,
and agreeing with you. You should buy that even if you don't need him, dude.
Yeah,
you should even if you're the worst team in the league or the best team or any of the other in between, you should go offer a 3rd round pick for Jakobi Meyers and just hold it for something better, because he's only been there a couple weeks. I think he has a better floor than Christian Watson just because of the way the Packers play for the rest of the season. But I'm a Watson guy, but I definitely completely agree with everything you just said.
There's a better market, cheaper market on Myers. Like, here's a 2 for Myers and a 3. Here's 2 for Myers, but Watson had some good. There was a lot of 2s and 2s plus a little more for him. So here's Jakobi and a 2. A 3 and a 2 today. Here's one for Mike Gesicki with no premium. That's not real. So there's definitely some a little bit cheaper Jakobi out there. So let's move on to the running backs though, and kind of have the same discussion. Breece is somebody who we've brought up all season long. I don't know if there's any other potential dip to buy in Breece left here, who's been pretty productive for the most part. Not what you expected, and the Jets have been bad, but in that environment, Breece gives me no reason to worry about the future of how elite Breece could be if he wasn't on one of the worst situations in the league.
Definitely.
And we've been saying this a lot of different weeks and all off season, so you're probably tired of hearing us say that, but Breece is certainly somebody at the top of the totem pole of, if there still is a dip, I'm buying the dip. I still have Breece ranked in like the top 6 running backs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I could.
I
might be able to get to 8, but yes, he's so into my top 10. It's totally fine. I'm buying all the Breece if there's any dip. There might not be much dip left, like you said, but I'm all in on the Breece.
I think he's like at least steadied the ship where people aren't talking about him stinking. But there's got to still be some more. Like, this was a day ago. Breece Hall and a 2 for Jaylen Warren and a 1. Right here's. Keaton Mitchell and a 1 for Breece Hall.
How many, like, all season, just like every time Breece's name come up in these trade talks, it was almost, in all these examples, it's almost always been the Breece side for me.
Yeah.
Pretty. Yeah.
Because Will Shipley 1 and a 2 for Breece. Done. Matthew Golden a 2 and a 4 for Breece.
Breece is 24 years old, bro.
I know, he's one of the best backs in the league, man.
Some of the things that are being said about Breece Hall right now are the same things that they said about Jonathan Taylor, dude.
Absolutely. That's 100% accurate right there.
This is exactly what we just did this.
Except he's a better receiver than and it will be used more as a receiver. It's going to take, and I want to talk about Swift here at the end, but it would take Breece to Kansas City, or Breece to or Breece to Chicago before, and everybody would be right back in where Breece is super high, and he'll be fine in this offseason because he's probably going somewhere else, which I don't know why they didn't trade him. And if I was him, I wouldn't sign a contract with the Jets again anyway.
Hell no.
Be like, nah, I'll take $2 million less to go over here. Obviously, it's not my money, but
for real,
I'm just give me 2 years over here for $2 million less, and I'll make that $2 million up in the next contract. While I'm
San Fran
Yeah.
San Fran re-rolls it. They re-roll it and be like, oh, we'll bring Breece in. We got McCaffrey under contract. We'll let him hang out for another year. We'll bring Breece over.
Yeah, like
Come
here's
on,
a great move. Chris, like if we were talking about rebuilders and whatnot, Christian McCaffrey for Breece, a 2 and a 3. Like somebody's getting elite RB1 production out of Christian McCaffrey right now, but it's a declining asset that could happen real fast. Could be 3 more awesome years from Christian McCaffrey, but you just reset the time clock to one of the closer things to Christian McCaffrey, right?
Wait a minute. I'm getting like, and I know it's a trade on Dynasty Daddy, whatever, but like that in that trade, they got Breece a 2 and a 3 for McCaffrey.
For Christian McCaffrey, yep.
All day long. What happens if Breece goes to Dallas? Come on.
Yeah, Breece in a 1 and 3. So some Breece action there. So an interesting one you brought up here was Chuba, right? Kind of just saw gives you, loved Chuba this offseason. He was, to me, he was like the last guy you could count on in a draft at the running back position. And that, started off okay, but really flubbed into a terrible call by us. And then Rico was kind of the guy. And then, no, you're good. And now, they talked about 2 backs, right? And, maybe you couldn't implement it. I didn't want to start Rico this week versus LA anyway, so I didn't play any Panthers running backs if I could help it. And then both of them come out and, Rico wasn't great, but it was like 9. And then Chuba scores the touchdown on the reception. And it just, all the things that you thought about Chuba start coming back. And so now there's some hope, and Rico's on a contract year. And so I don't know where you wanted to take the Chuba thing, but I was interested in the price tag for sure.
Me too. You want to pull that up on Dynasty Daddy while I say a couple things about Chuba? Here's the thing. It's expectations, right? In the investing market, I do some real estate stuff. I talk to real estate agents about this when they're on the other side of a deal from me, and I literally try to tell people how to do their job. It's expectation management, dude. With me and you, like you said, I literally, if we had to go back and redo it, I would redo it. It was Dave Canales running back, and Chuba proved it. He crushed it down the stretch last year. He's super fast if you give him a lane. So it's not like he can't. We all want the explosives. The NFL wants the explosive, Casey. We got to have a 20-plus yard play. Chuba could do that. He could catch. He could play in the passing game. He was Canales' running back. It was Chuba. He was the last running back in a startup that you could really hang your hat on to get potential, quote unquote, bell cow work. And then Rico Dowdle happened. I mean, it is what it is. But right now, the expectations, you and I took Dowdle, I believe, was in the 7th round of a startup in a FFPC league this year. And so I literally text you today. Like, the team that I've had Chuba on for 4 years, I'm not upset. I'm fine. It was found money. I didn't pay much for him. I liked him. He's good. He progressed into being like, I couldn't keep him on the bench anymore on a team that's great. You and I buy Chuba this year in the 7th round of a startup with other good dynasty assets on the board. I'm less than thrilled. Less than thrilled with my investment, bro. Right? Yeah. So it's expectations. We expected this out of Chuba, and we paid the price for this, and we didn't get that. And so now, what's the price on Chuba? Because this is the type of roller coaster of emotions that run us up and down dynasty values. And so in my one league where I've had Chuba for 4 years and I've done a whole lot of winning, you're not going to get Chuba off me for even a fair price, because he's great depth for my team and he's helped me out. And I know that there's more there, and he might come back around and be a starter for me yet. Well, on that team that we spent a 7th round pick on him, if I could get anywhere close to that 7th round pick, like I'm the same person managing 2 different teams, and my price paid, my asset allocation is completely different. And I have 2 different sets of feelings towards the same player. It's wild. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, right? No, absolutely. I mean, I talk about that all the time with players, like and mostly quarterbacks, right? And there's I don't say equity built up, right? There's equity built up in player like Josh Allen or whomever to have bad games, make bad throws in games, and nobody make a big deal out of it. But right now it's all on Caleb. Every time Caleb has a bad throw, everybody, because there is no equity on it. And also there's expectation because he was the number 1 pick, and there's no equity. And so immediately microscope on that, but not so much on when, guys, Drake May can make some bad throws right now and nobody makes anything of it.
That's right. That's a great example. It's a great example.
So it's just, and listen, I'm telling you, guys make bad throws every game and you're like, whatever. But when it's, so it's same kind of deal, but no, 100%. So there is some stuff with Chuba here. Here's a 2 for Chuba. Here's another 2 for Chuba. A day ago, there was a 3 for Chuba. Today, there was a 3 for Chuba.
That's what I'm talking about. Getting Chuba for a random 3. That's exactly why I brought
2/3, late 2, whatever, whatever. I'll take all those, right?
Yes.
So that's a great call. And, I don't know where it's going to be next year. I can't imagine they're going to sign Rico Dowdle again, but maybe they will. And maybe it doesn't quite get back to the expectation that you had of Chuba coming into this season of him being, hey, this is one of the cheapest bell cows you can get. And maybe he's not going to necessarily be a bell cow, but now I've at least seen Canales run out with 2 guys and hey, if Chuba could just get back to being the 1A, and every game's going to be a little different. We've seen it with Swift and Monungai, and we've seen it with Montgomery and Gibbs throughout their career. Hell, we've seen it it's not really, but we've seen it at least on drives with Algier and Bijan, right?
Yeah.
And so, this can be the same, and Chuba getting some catches back, and that catch was, nice 40-yard catch, right? That's what explosive run kind of got out there, and that, so all that stuff was good. And you had made I didn't want to miss it before we move on, but you had made a point kind of when we were talking about, or maybe when we first got on here and without saying it, but essentially like, the way that the Panthers were having to play in the stretch where Chuba was hurt and then Rico came in and did well is a little different than I feel like they're playing right now.
Yeah.
Right.
That was coaches talk about, but the Patriots always talked about quarters of the season. First 4 weeks, second 4 weeks. It's a long season. We break it down in quarters, et cetera, et cetera. Like Rico Dowdle dragged the Panthers forward at a moment where he couldn't have been more of a savior. Bryce Young couldn't get anything right. Their defense was getting beat up, and they were about to be left for dead. And Rico Dowdle drug them forward. Of course, it was against the Cowboys and the Dolphins, but he went to do it a couple more weeks. Like he literally carried them. And now we see Bryce's confidence come back for a couple weeks. He had a big, 400-yard game or something 2 weeks ago. And then this week, dude, they just beat the most balanced team in the NFL, right? Obviously, if the Super Bowl was this week and you just had to throw teams in it, I'm betting on the Chiefs because they got Mahomes. But outside of that, this week, if we had to just say who's winning the Super Bowl and they just played the Super Bowl and you don't have to worry about Matt Stafford for 6 more weeks being old, like the Rams, bro. They're the most balanced team. And it's the NFL any given Sunday. They travel to Charlotte. They're the best team, and they are at least the top 3 team, and they know it. You can't get up every week, yada, yada, yada. You could certainly say this game meant a lot more to the Panthers than the Rams. Although if the Rams won it, that would have done a lot towards their home field advantage, blah, blah, blah. But you just can't, you can't be the best team in the league every week. It's not how the NFL works. So good on the Panthers for catching them. Good on the Panthers for beating them. But so their Dowdle did some things for the Panthers that when they really needed it most, they couldn't have even scripted it any better for this Superman to come out and just play better than he's ever played in his entire life. Great. Well, now, so that's all fine and well. Really, my job is to tell you about Chuba 2 weeks ago when you could have got him for a 4th, right? So I'm not saying this is a great time to say, hey, yeah, look, Chuba just showed you again that he's a good back, and Dave Canales just showed you that he had both 2 running backs get 17 or 18 carries apiece. That was, I don't know if you want to call it game script, whatever. It worked. They beat the Rams, so definitely going to probably try to use that next week, no matter who they play.
Yeah.
But Chuba's more. So we talk about windows and buying windows. Like, if you can get Chuba right now for a 3, a late 2, and he goes back to not getting much playing time next week, you'll be all right. But if he scores 15 points, he's not going to get a 40-yard catch and run every week. So if he's really splitting that much time with, he's probably not going to score more fantasy points than that for the rest of the season. It could happen. He could get 2 easy carries on the 1-yard line. I'm just saying, like, now's a great time to buy him for a 3, a late 2 if you have to, a 3 and a 4 if you have. Now's a good time to buy him. Yes, it would have been nice to get him last week for a 4 when everybody forgot about him, but something could happen for Dowdle and Chuba could burst back onto the scene. He was literally worth a first-round pick 6 weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just been a sharp decline. And if you catch somebody like me and Casey who just started him, we would have, if I could turn Chuba into a first, that's just living in the past, right? Mm-hmm. But right now, if I could take every other team that I have him, that I don't have him on, and go get him for a 3rd, now we're dollar cost averaging around. You can't do it on the same team because you already have him, but at least you can say, hey, I got him over here for a 3. And then when he blows up, he's too good. He could, when a player can A, break long runs, and B, catch the ball, they're going to be in the league for a little while. And we've seen him operate last year as a bell cow. They paid the guy,
Right. Yeah, no, I like it. All right, I want to hit 1 or 2 more guys real quick before we get off, and then I want to close with one guy. DeAndre Swift. It's shit or get off the pot time. We've talked about this guy all season long, and I think his value has gone up, down, and all around, and it was kind of balanced back out. And I'm looking at the trade market right now. It's 2, a 2 and a 3, a 2 and a 3. Here's Brissett and Swift for Pearsall. Here's a 1 for Swift, and here's a 2 for Swift. So, like, what do we, he's got another year with Chicago. Chicago looks good. He looks good there. I can't imagine Chicago goes into next season with the 2 guys that they have at the running back position solely.
I know.
But they're also doing fine with it, so they could address other problems. But it'd just be like, is that what they're going to do? Feels like they could go plug some other holes and get better, but I don't know. I'm really torn on this. I don't really know he's not super old. He's doesn't have a whole lot of wear and tear on his body necessarily. He's obviously, playing pretty well. Like, just had, 1.9 last week. So I didn't have him in a whole lot of lineups this week against the Eagles.
Of course.
He goes out and puts out 20.8. But I mean, was 9, 13, 10, 16, 25, 20, 15, 14, 9, 1.9, and then the 20.8 here. So what are you doing if you're a rebuilder, middling team? You just selling off your Swift right now just to to a competitor for as much as you can get?
Well, quickly on the 1 and the 2, the first round pick and the second round pick, 2 different trades that you read off when you started there. I'll sell him for a first right now, and I'll buy him for a second right now. That's easy math for me. And honestly, I've always liked DeAndre Swift, and I will say that Ben Johnson going to the Bears was the big conundrum for me. And I kept coming back to it in the offseason because you were like, DeAndre Swift is so cheap, and I think he's going to be awesome. And I was like, but he's already been kicked off of a team with Ben Johnson
Sure.
before, right? So, like, that was if DeAndre Swift would have went to another team looking like this starter, yes, I want Ben Johnson's running back, but I didn't know if Ben Johnson wanted that running back, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and like, if I could buy DeAndre Swift for a 2 right now on a team that can win, like, if I could get some use out of him this year, I'd give a 2 for him for sure. That being said, he could do, because he could bust long runs, and he's good with out of the backfield catching the ball, right?
Yeah.
So, like, but he could also get Calvin. Monunga could do 2 short yard touchdowns next week, and Swift could have 11 points, right?
Yeah.
But so I think buying him for a 2 and selling him for a 1 is just a clean, easy, simple way to look at it. obviously there's a lot of context that would go into all your different teams, but like you said, he's quote unquote only 26, but he's, in a NFL, in a league, the NFL is coming back more towards the running backs as defenses play more too high shell, too deep safeties. They call it shell, whatever. If the more back the safeties get and the lighter, the linebackers get weight wise, the DeAndre Swifts of the world have it a lot easier than they did 5-8 years ago. Right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm happy to purchase him if the price is right, but at the same time, like, I don't think he's the quote unquote generational talent. So I'm happy to sell him if the price is right. If you're a middling team and you're not really going to make the playoffs, or, DeAndre Swift could get real hot. Like he had the 1.9 last week because he had a fumble and the coach benched him. Right. And yeah, dude, he was sitting on our bench going against the Phillies, the Philly defense that pretty dang stingy.
Yeah.
Pretty dang stingy.
Yeah,
They got it. The defense got a couple linebackers back that were injured, and now the Philly defense is going to come, and that was tape or whatever you want to call it, dude. That running game that the Bears put together on it was the day after Thanksgiving, like, that was an amazing football game from offensively.
Absolutely. And DeAndre was good, and Monungai was good, and they ran the ball well, which I think is going to be a staple of Ben Johnson. So I think DeAndre Swift stays around. So I don't like I said, I don't necessarily feel the need to have to like sell immediately, but if I could get multiple twos or a first, and I was a middling rebuilder, that'd be fine. If I'm a competitor, I think you kind of hit that all on the head there. All right, I want to talk about Ashton Jeanty to close the show, but there was, as we were doing all this talking, I was looking at some quarterbacks and this and that, and it was just kind of equity and expectations and all this stuff. A quarterback popped into my mind, and we hadn't talked about any real quick, and I just want to say you should be buying Kyler Murray right now. Me and Big Co bought him for a second in a league, and if that's the price
Super
tag,
flex.
people are going to be throwing super flex, of course.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. Sorry to clarify that, that would be super flex, right? I get it. Like, everybody hates him and he stinks and yada, yada, yada. And look at what Jakobi Brissett's doing. And maybe they don't want to bring him back and even open up his IR window. All that can be true. And he could still be a quarterback who career average wise has scored 19.4 points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this year it was closer to the 15 range, and he wasn't playing great, and it certainly has been 17, 23, 21, 18, 18, 17, and then this year he was at 15.6 through the 5 games, so not awesome, but I truly believe that he can be a 16 to 18 point quarterback for the duration of his career, and there's going to be enough demand for Kyler Murray somewhere else. And again, you can make all the excuses for Kyler you want. He wasn't great, and this system also doesn't fit him well of what they're running here. Like, that's just not what Kyler does, and so he needs to change. Something needs to happen. Petzing's not the guy who needs to be married to Kyler, and Kyler doesn't need to be married to Petzing. Right? They need to see a counselor. They need to decide get a separation, go their separate ways, and get the paperwork started now. But what I'm saying is like, this is again where you pounce on opportunity because people can't take emotion out of the game of saying he sucks. And it's like, look, he might suck. I could tell you that he's better than Justin Fields.
Yes.
And it's but there's been plenty of people who propped up Justin Fields a million times, and Kyler Murray can competently operate a quarterback or an offense for the most part, win you games and run around. Right. So
he's never had numbers as bad as JJ McCarthy.
Right. And that's yeah. So that's just a quick one I wanted to throw in there. If you can go and trade, get yourself a Kyler Murray for cheap right now, because, people are just down on him and they stink and they hate him. Take an opportunity to go ahead, and you don't even have to really like him, but I can tell you that in Superflex, like, he's probably going to be at the very least a QB2 for the rest of his career. And you can buy him at a reasonable price right now, and they probably have QB1 games, right? So that's what you want. You're trying to get edges and win, and I think he's a good there's an opportunity to buy here, regardless of how you feel about him as a player. He's going to get more opportunities in the league.
100% agree.
All right, I just want to finish it off kind of where we started here with, and Ashton Jeanty is the last name on the list, and I don't think this is going to take too long. But I've now heard some big talking heads. I think Ross Tucker was one, and he's got a pretty big podcast. He calls games. He has a gambling podcast. He fills in for Dan Patrick sometimes. So pretty notable guy. I think I've heard somebody else, talk about him, and then I've seen some fantasy guys come in here. Now I've saw some guy named Brentley Wiseman. I'm sure this guy's a nice guy, and we all say things that are wrong. I think this is a very wrong take right now. He said, "I know the Raiders' offensive line is beyond abysmal, but I've watched every Ashton Jeanty snap, and he literally can't get out of trouble or make something happen on his own. I loved him as a prospect, and it's not over for him, but I don't see Bijan or Jamar as an NFL, him as a Bijan or Jameer, NFL type talent." Sorry, I butchered that read right there. Which, hey, that's fine. We can kind of say that. But the first bit of it, I didn't agree with. And then Ray GQ quoted him with his boy Jay Rich and said, Jay Rich called Ashton Jeanty Mountain West Brian Robinson all draft cycle with a emoji. And then he came back and said, dog, Jay Rich might not be too far off. It's a tough watch, even with their offensive line. I just don't see anything dynamic. And Ray comes back saying he's a runway running back. I think all of this is totally wrong. I can't agree with it. I can't go with it. And if you've watched every snap of Ashton Jeanty and say he can't get out of trouble, I think you got bad eyes. Like, I don't know what you're watching. Like, he's up near the top of missed tackles forced. Not that that's a stat that really means anything. But I would go, and he doesn't need, we don't want him to the outcome to be David Montgomery, although we don't know what David Montgomery would have been if there was no Gibbs in the Lions. But I can distinctly remember people saying these same things about David Montgomery, and they were so fucking wrong. The Bears just sucked. Like, yeah. That's all. They didn't have play calling. They didn't have an offensive line, and David Montgomery would do his best to get back to the line and have over 3 yards a carry. I think Jeanty's at 4.1, right? I'll say this, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but
can you hear me right now? Is my
your mic's kind of weird right now.
Yeah, I went through it just now. Something happened with my my computer, and I honestly thought I was out of here. I thought
I was.
Oh, now you're back.
I thought I wasn't going to make it through the rest of the stream here. I was clicking, and you were talking, and I thought I was literally got kicked out of the episode here. So,
right,
dude, thing you just said, bringing up the complete, like, first, you're ahead of it because you got a couple people, but like everything that happened with David Montgomery was never as good as Jeanty, and we know that. But like, that's exactly this type of situation. We talk about the situation with quarterbacks all the time. Dude, right now, the Raiders already fired their offensive coordinator. It was supposed to be like the next best thing that came back in from college because Chip was here. Chip Kelly was in the NFL. He changed the game with the speed. And then it kind of wore off in the Eagles, and then he went back to college, and all of a sudden he was like the best play caller in college because he slowed it down just a little bit, understanding how important first downs were and yada yada. I mean, he was supposed to be so much. And then, they bring in the coach, we're chewing gum, we're not rebuilding, we're all in. Dude, Geno Smith is falling on his face. There's no offensive line. They trade away their best wide receiver, right? So like
immediately goes on to have like 6 catches every game.
Of course, like it's literally, it's all they can do to get the ball towards Brock Bowers. They have an absolute generational talent tight end. They literally have a generational talent tight end, and the games that they can get the ball towards him, he scores multiple touchdowns and looks like a unicorn. And then there'll be 2 or 3 games in a row where the defense is like, nah, dude, we ain't having that. If we just put 3 guys over here, they're inept. They cannot do anything else. So like, yes, everything that's going on right now gives you a potential. How is there a buying window for Ashton Jeanty? Somehow the Raiders produced it.
Right. And I'm not saying you need to go out and, trade all sorts of crazy stuff for him. But what I'm saying is, and it's the same way we started this podcast, was like, when there's a crack in there with elite players, I try to go knock on doors. Right. And now, and I don't know if it is in your league or if anybody else, because I think he's RB like 11. On the season with all of that going on and how terrible we just said the Raiders essentially were. Let's see here. RB 13 points per game and RB 11 on total fantasy points, right? So everything's terrible, and he's a top 12 running back, right? And that's the state of running backs isn't excellent by any means, but
it's deeper than it has been in a while,
right? And what my point was once you start seeing people like that say stuff like that, other people are hearing that.
Yes,
and that's what it comes to me, where I go, all right. Somebody might already been thinking it because they drafted Jeanty and they're not getting the production that, bro, we fielded millions of questions, not millions, thousands, hundreds of questions about Bijan Robinson when he started. Oh, what's wrong with Bijan?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's wrong with Bijan? Jonathan Taylor, same thing. Oh, what's wrong with Jonathan Taylor? And then a couple of years in between there, we had some more Jonathan Taylor where he's battling injury. The Colts stunk, yada, yada, yada. And now he's an MVP. Like,
I know.
This is just as like, Jeanty doesn't move like Bijan. We already knew that. Jeanty doesn't move like Gibbs. We already knew that. Like, it's okay. Guys get it done differently. Like, Steven Jackson was not the same running back as LaDainian Tomlinson. And I'm not saying LaDainian Tomlinson and Steven Jackson were remotely close to fantasy points, at least every season. Obviously, LaDainian Tomlinson's a Hall of Famer.
Steven Jackson crushed.
I'm just saying, and was on a terrible team. Just body types and the way you get it done. Everybody doesn't have to get it done at the running back position. They look the same way. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that you watched every snap of the Raiders and you just don't see him being able to create on his own, like, dude, you could go. I wanted to find the one play and just respond to it. Like, they threw a swing pass over to him, and to their credit, they've at least started just throwing it to him because, hey, if we just get it out to him in space, he's going to go get some yards, right? He threw it to him. He shrugged somebody off, stiff-armed another guy, ran down the sideline 10 yards, and smashed somebody going out of bounds. And it was just like, that's exactly what we want to see from Jeanty. And it's like, he can catch. If he can be the guy who can handle 20-some carries and be a game breaker. We've seen him in certain games. The Bears game, he broke a run off. Like, he can break runs off. And like, yeah, sure, maybe he does need some sort of a hole, like a lot of guys do, right? So it's just, it's crazy that people are suggesting this already and saying that I watched it's like, nah. You're watching it with the wrong colored glasses on them, man. You saying you liked him as you didn't like him as a prospect, and you don't like the Raider. I don't know what it is, but like, there's people out there right now that are infiltrating earwaves of other people saying, it's just,
and so let me jump in there. There's a guy out there, and it might be in your league, it might not be. If you started up this year, somebody took Ashton Jeanty over Bijan Robinson in a startup because they were like, hey, I'm getting Ashton Jeanty. Like, somebody took Ashton Jeanty over Gibbs in a startup. And if not, the next pick, right? And like, maybe they're still maybe they might be, if they took Jeanty in the first round of a startup, they might be just, hey, I'm going all in on the young guys, but they also might just be fair weather fans, and they might be hearing these things that you're talking about and be like, well, I don't want to get stuck with that guy. Mm-hmm. And then there might be a chink in the armor. There might be, there's no question about it that Jeanty is worth less today than he was 2 months ago, because you mocked him, and I think he went to like, what, 2.7, 2.6, 2.8, right? In the mock draft that we did a couple weeks ago, and versus the 111, 112, 21, 22, so like, he's fallen a half a round, 3/4 of a round already, which is, from the very almost top of the perch. It's not like he's stumbled down in the fourth round or anything, but like, there is a reduction in price. Is it worth kicking, tapping on the door, maybe kicking in the door on it and trying to get a trade done? It's worth looking into, is all Casey's trying to say. And the fact that that was 3 weeks ago. That was a month ago. We did the mock draft. Now you got the talking heads, just a couple, but a couple bigger ones in the industry. And
there's football guys and fantasy guys who are saying those things.
Oh, maybe Jeanty isn't that good. That's exactly what you need to hear to make a crack become a little bit bigger, and now you get a trade done.
Right, and that's what we're talking. That's where we started and ended that same way. That if there's some cracks and there's some people saying those things, that's when I start to knock on doors and say, What's Jeanty worth to you? The first trade on Dynasty Daddy is Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, a 3 and a 4 for Jeanty. You know,
you couldn't have got that trade done 2 months
That's what
ago.
I'm talking about. You know, here's Loveland and James Cook, which James Cook is crushing it, and I get it. Maybe you don't want to do that, but you know, if you're in a rebuilding, not that James Cook's super old, I think he's 26, but Jeanty and a 2 back, right? You know, here's Jeanty for Henderson straight up.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take my chances on Jeanty again moving forward. Oh, by the way, I mean, different ball game right now against the Giants, but Ramondre outsnapped Travion again, and Travion didn't do anything. And it was they got up early and they didn't need to. But you know, could be something that you battle. And I like him. You know, Nico for Ashton Jeanty, right? These are all things that in a rebuilding situation, even still right now to this day, the value is still on the Jeanty side. So if you can make that trade, if you're in the rebuilding situation, you just probably netted positive value, right?
Yes.
So that's just kind of what we're talking about with some ideas there. So if there is any possibility, like, you know, I don't want to go trading Jeanty for JT if I got a good team right now, right? You know, you don't want to do that.
Right.
But, you know, that's just.
And that's exactly. I was thinking about that when you kept naming trades, like Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and something. Like that's a dynasty trade that can happen right now because Josh Jacobs is going to fill in and give you just what Jeanty's going to give you, and then bringing in the hammer that is Devontae Adams to help somebody win a championship. Like that is a very plausible trade. Like that is a very solid trade. But this time next year, it's probably going to be Jeanty by a landslide, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so. And there's even some more slowness of Jeanty, and people don't have patience, and that's a whole nother ball game. But you know, it is kind of what it is. So we're running long here. We want to get it done and knocked out so we can get to sleep. And the editors can get rolling. So I appreciate you guys. Good luck in your matchups this week. To moving on to the playoffs here. We'll be back next week. Probably won't do as much market talking trades here. Maybe we'll do some other things because might not be as helpful right at that point. But we'll be here for you. We'll talk to you. So appreciate you.
Pleasure.
See you next week.